Can you hear me? Should I go? But I don't as the adults, and frankly, it's ridiculous, reckless, and confusing, even for me as an adult. Adults are not following the behaviors and guidelines outlined in our student handbooks, but somehow expect children to. Maturity, patience, tact, tolerance. I don't want to be here, and I don't want to have to say these things, and I don't like any of this is happening, and trying very hard to not engage in any kind of this behavior. I'm trying very hard to lead by example for my daughters and for you all here and for our community, but I don't know how much more patience I will have if my daughter comes home crying and scared again because of ongoing harassment and bullying. We cannot sit idly by waiting to grieve collectively over another student's suicide. We cannot ask our children to wait and wonder when the name calling, slapping, or shoving is going to escalate to something far worse or more harmful. And we cannot continue to put our educators and staff in harm's way either. We have to do the work at home, and we have to make a conscious effort to engage with one another in a courteous, respectful, tolerant manner and work together in all ways possible. Please, let's have a great school year. Let's show these districts, the other districts, what it means to be a community. Let's encourage everyone to celebrate who they are by putting their best foot forward, all while fostering positive and healthy learning environment. We can do this. I believe in us, and I believe in everyone here in doing what they can to make that happen. Thank you.
All right, next is Greg Lyons. Please state your name, address, and the agenda or the item that you wish to comment on.
Good evening, my name is Greg Lyons, and my address is 3870 Southeast 96th Street in Reynolds. And this is to the board. I've been present.
Excuse me, are you representing a group?
Yes, American Legion.
Okay.
I've been present for recent meetings where the topic of bullying has been brought to your attention, as it is tonight. As a member of the local American Legion, Post 682, I have a letter I would like to read. And this letter is from the National Judge Advocate of the American Legion, and it's dated just last week, July 26th. To whom it may concern, I have been made aware of the allegation of stolen valor levied against Whitney Smith McIntosh by various individuals in the community seeking to score political points. While the American Legion does not respond or intervene in strictly political squabbles, Whitney serves as the chaplain for the Department of Iowa, necessitating this response. She also serves as the chaplain for the district and the Post. Stolen valor is a misunderstood expression, and the definition of what constitutes stolen valor is often in the eye of the beholder. It can refer both to the criminal act of falsifying one's military background for pecuniary benefit, as well as more colloquially, as someone who either embellishes their military career. I have appeared on MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, ABC, and NBC as an expert on stolen valor and have taught continuing legal education courses for attorneys that may encounter it in their practice. I've testified in several cases and have personally represented clients who have exposed politicians, musicians, actors, and other prominent and public people. My writing on the subject have appeared in numerous national publications. Simply stated, I am in a small coterie of individuals seeking to expose such behavior that has been doing and have been doing this for many years. Additionally, I am a combat veteran myself, having served in Afghanistan from 2004 to 2005, where I received a combat infantry badge. In the Marine Corps, we call it a combat action ribbon. I got mine in Vietnam in 1972. For the last 10 plus years, I have been an attorney where the majority of my individual legal work has included at least a substantial component of stolen valor. I've also served as a war reporter embedding with combat units on several continents and have having heard the anxiety and anger which bona fide cases of stolen valor incite within the warfighting community. I have reviewed the service record of Whitney Smith McIntosh, as well as many of the public comments she has made regarding her service. And I find no evidence whatsoever that she has engaged in either a legal or colloquial sense in stolen valor. She is an honorably discharged veteran of the United States and has not embellished that career in any identified statement which I could find. A veteran is a veteran. Engaging in classification as to whose service was more worthwhile only hurts all veterans. I appreciate the service Whitney gave her country and hope that future generations of Americans will follow her path. Signed, Mark C. Seavey, Juris Doctorate, National Judge Advocate. I'm not sure what this board can do about the recent comments by citizens reading their grievances. However, in regards to my complaint and that of our National Judge Advocate, I believe that there are two members on this board who could immediately stop at least two of their friends who have been harassing one of your board members about this subject. I have seen these
1 minute, Greg.
I have seen these two members pictured out celebrating with the two offenders, and all without masks. I won't give their names now, but you know who they are. Just tell them to stop with the vicious personal attacks on one of your board members. This was the same time that one of your members was changing an amendment 3 times in order to get the amendment to pass, just so that Southeast Polk Elementary School students would have to mask their classrooms. I am not sure who was bullied more, the K-5 students or the parents who were here that night. The majority that night, all has a part to play. You may also want to check in on what's going on at Linn-Mar. Thank you for your time.
All right, next we have Jennifer Hullett. Please state your name, address, and topic, please.
My name is Jennifer Hullett. I live at 8272 Northeast 38th Avenue here in Altoona. Last month, I spoke at the school board meeting. The next morning, there was an article written in the Blaze in retort to the school board meeting that claims my issue was in regards to pornographic materials being allowed in the schools. That is not the case, so let me reaffirm my concerns so that it is clear. If there was pornographic materials in school libraries, that would be cause for concern. If that was truly the issue, we should have all been informed that pornographic materials were in the school libraries. However, most of us were not invited to that conversation. And instead of taking responsibility for the fact that mistakes were made by only posting the book list on a partisan Facebook group page, thus violating several school board policies, the school board member decided that the best way forward was to ignore the issue I raised entirely by trying to spin it into something else. This is a violation of policy 200-04, the Code of Ethics, Section 1, Part 1, I will listen. Section 1, Part 2, I will respect the opinions of others. And Section 1, Part 14, I will carefully consider petitions, resolutions, and complaints, and will act in the best interest of the school district. The fact that the school board member has shared and commented on the Blaze article shows her agreement with the content within. In fact, she says the interviewer and writer of the article was very good. Sanctioning and the name calling and threatening language in the article is a violation of policy 108-00, the anti-bullying, anti-harassment policy. The final paragraph of the article reads, "This is war. All you have left to decide is whether Smith McIntosh or her rancid accusers will be the casualties in this fight. Pick a side. Ambiguity is for fools. We simply can't coexist with this. We should not, we must not. However, I believe it is the civic duty of every citizen to hold those that they elect to the promises that they make to get themselves elected. Myself and my family, which includes a disabled combat veteran, an Army brat who has lived in 3 different states within her first 4 years of life, and the 2 young children of an
1 minute.
1 minute.
Yep.
And the 2 young children of an active duty family member who is currently deployed for a year do not deserve this type of vitriolic language. Maybe I'm overreacting to the language due to our family's military history, but as a veteran, Miss Smith McIntosh, you should understand the meanings and connotations behind words like war and casualties, because my family does. My husband fought against
30
ISIS
seconds.
in Operation Inherent Resolve during the Arab Spring in 2015 in Iraq. He personally saw the end game of people who cannot, should not, must not coexist with people of opposing viewpoints. The rhetoric we use and endorse is important, especially when you're an elected official. If the purpose of this article was to dissuade citizens from speaking up about governmental issues that concern them, the intent has failed. As Americans, we can, we should, and we must be able to have these conversations
That's time.
without dehumanizing one another. My husband did not fight for my right to have a voice so that I could be bullied into silence. Thank you.
All right, on to letter F, consent agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Thank you. Any questions or discussion? No. All right, Karen?
No. Yes.
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 All right, on to new old business, Kids Club Agreement 2022-2023.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, any questions about the Kids Club Agreement renewal? Okay. Karen?
Yes.
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 Letter B, construction change order multi-purpose stadium.
Motion to approve. Second.
All right, questions on this one?
So just try to get to the right thing. So this is from March or April 1st, yeah. Yeah, April. And I know we discussed this before, so just for public, remind us what the problem was with the backfill, I guess.
In my recollection, the backfill is due to additional water issues within that northeast corner of the north building wall. So there had to be additional excavation and backfill to get to the places where they needed to go a little bit deeper.
So what was the difference from, we had the water issue back from the beginning when the change order came in from all the rock and the drainage, and I don't know what the cost was off the top of my head, but what's the difference between that and what we're doing now for the backfill, I guess?
This is the same thing at that time, back in the date as indicated, back in December, we were doing this based on time and materials and not a dollar amount, because they didn't know what the dollar amount would be in the end. They just needed to do the work and they didn't know how long it would take. So this is the actual dollar amounts rather than the estimated 45,000.
Okay, so that's what I just wanted to clarify. So we estimated the 45,000, we're at the 35,000 for the, okay, that's, yeah. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
So bouncing off of that, are we still planning on doing more work and the dollar amount could go up to 45, or is it 35 the limit? Is that where we're stopping?
They are done with that work, so that is
Okay.
the dollar amount for the change order.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Karen?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
All right, letter C, construction change order parking lot projects. All
Motion to approve.
Second.
right, any discussion on the change orders? Okay, Karen?
Yes.
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 Okay, letter D, bus bids.
Motion to approve the purchase of 4 77 passenger and 1 special needs equipped bus from Thomas Truck Center totaling $703,172. All administration also recommends the board approve the purchase of 2 school bus vans at a cost estimated at 90 to 100,000 from a vendor to be determined.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion?
So we want to spend $700,000 on these and have that without AC, but if we included AC and went with the other group, we would only be spending $1,000 more, $10,000 more, is that right?
For each of the 77 passenger buses,
Mhm.
in one hand, Thomas Truck Center's air conditioning is not included. If we wanted that, it's $13,800.
Right.
For the other vendor, it's $11,000 to include the air conditioning per bus.
So it would be 13,000 per bus if we go with Thomas and 11,000 per bus if we go with the bus and truck company? Is
If
that
we
right?
choose air
If we choose that,
conditioning,
okay.
correct.
All right.
You got $45,000 more. total.
Yeah. I'm just kind of curious, I mean, because what months do we really need to use air conditioning on the buses? I mean, most of the summer, they're not running, right? So it would just be like 2 months out of the year?
We do
So
have
this-
summer school programs. We do
Okay.
also do transportation for some collaborative efforts with groups in the Southeast Polk area, including groups like Swerve, which does our Altoona Kids Cafe,
Mhm.
and also Altoona Kids Club uses our buses at times as well. For a fee,
Summer sporting events.
correct?
So I think maybe the question behind that is, do we have enough buses with air conditioning to support the summer activities that we have?
Bear with me. Typically, all of our special needs equipped buses have air conditioning. That's just something that is either required or something we've always done. Typically, we don't have air conditioning on our 77 passenger buses, but for what happened last year, which we funded that with some ESSER funds or COVID-related funding. I don't know what the fleet 77 passenger buses are when it comes to air conditioning.
Currently, we have 4 large buses with air conditioning. We will be getting 4 more in October. We run about 15 vehicles during the summer of non-spec ed capability for events, summer school, for multiple different buildings, and athletics, and then the extra groups that he talked about. So we are probably about half of our summer fleet right now.
So if we had like longer trips for sporting events and whatnot, would you try and use those buses with the AC? I'm just trying to make sure that our kids are not sweltering in the heat.
Well, usually we're gonna put them on where we're gonna use them most at.
Okay.
And that's going to be our local events when they're running, like summer school runs right at noon time.
Mhm.
So you're be talking at the most hot part of the day.
Right.
Your athletics, a lot of times will leave at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we would look at that and take that all into consideration. If we do have them open and they're not being used, let's say like Fridays, they don't have summer school, we put them over onto athletics if they need. So
Okay.
we shuffle them around the best we can. And if the vehicle's working, sometimes We just don't have them because they're out of service because we're working on them during that time. So.
That brings up a really good question. So actually what Kevin had said, as far as why we bought the buses last year and why we put air on them. So I guess my question would be, why are we not worried about filtration now? I mean, why are we not just going in and spending the money now so we don't have to retrofit a bus or, I mean, somebody kind of get two bonuses out of it as
I
far
wouldn't
as,
say that we're not worried about the filtration.
well, right, but
Last year was an anomaly because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
We were able to get a pre-approval with the state prior to the purchase of just the air conditioning unit component of that school bus. So yes, I mean, we could choose to do air conditioning across buses, but there's also a price tag to that and you know, resources of what they are.
right. Well, I'm just thinking for 45,000, it kind of, I don't know, we get the extra safeguard as far as filtration that we
Right.
talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And then you also get that benefit of the activities and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. It just, it'd be a good investment up front.
It was, that last year, it was, we put air conditioning on and it was because it does give us the access to bring in outside air
Mhm.
when it's 100, you know, even when it's 20 below zero, we can turn it on and bring outside air in. So you're not keeping the windows closed and doing that. The biggest benefit that I see is going to that is just because we have students that are spec ed and they're air conditioned, but we do have other health issues. We've got kids with asthma and stuff to that effect, which really don't qualify for spec ed, but this does affect some of those students. So, you know, right now we have a limited amount of funding, and you know that's sort of the deal is which way do we go? Because the last thing we want to do is sacrifice the number of buses, so we don't replace them when we get back to where we're having buses that are 18 and 20 years old in service. We've worked really hard over the last few years to try to bring that number down, and we're seeing some benefits over that because shortage of mechanics and stuff that we have, we've been able to get through because most of those buses now are under warranty and we don't have to fix them. So there is that to be said about it too.
So what do you do to keep the buses cool?
I'm sorry,
What do you do to keep the buses cool? Because I mean, we have a whole fleet of buses. I'm sure there's a plan to, you know, keep the buses cool enough for these students whenever they hop on the bus and throughout. What do you do?
You know, if the weather comes down to something that is severe enough, we generally will go home early or we won't have school if it's multiple days. We do other things too to help it. Air conditioning isn't like in your car where you turn it on, it's gonna bring it down to 60 degrees. It doesn't work like that in a large vehicle to that effect.
Mhm.
So we have in the past, and then we put it in our specs to require tinted windows. That brings it down 5 degrees. We could go to roof coloring it to white. That would bring it down another 5 degrees. So there are these other things. Each BTU will bring it down so much. Air conditioning will probably bring it down about 10 degrees with the rooftop units that we're putting in. So so every one of those add up a little bit. So we've done what we can during that time. So we insulate them. So there's an insulation factor with an R12 insulation in them. So that helped. So we do all of those steps also, which they're a lot milder on the budget. So we'll put those into our specs. This is just a large one. And it becomes a pretty much a bit of an expense.
Dan, the buses that are arriving this fall are what we purchased last year.
Yeah.
And it was actually the board that decided to get the air conditioning. You didn't,
That
you
is
guys
correct.
didn't
Yeah.
recommend it. The board,
This is
approve
something
that
that we've
purchase.
always put as an option in our bids for the last probably 4 or 5 years. To get you guys to talk about which way you want to go because of the investment value. It's not a $500 or $1,000 deal. It's quite considerable, especially when you talk about the number of buses that we purchase every year.
How long do you keep a bus? You said,
Currently, with the schedule that we have, our buses will be about 14 years old if we continue the schedule that we are with the 5 or 6 buses a year.
so who's
We
good
go
at
back
math?
down to
Who's
4.
good at math? There you go. Thanks, Tom.
If we go back down to 4,
For all.
we're going to be about 18 to 20 years.
Know which one you do off of the
That
Thomas,
becomes 2,000. No, it is total for all 4 buses. So it'll be $2,000 a year.
but off the Thomas quote or the,
We would go off of Hogman. I mean, it's $10,000 different. I was just thinking 45,000.
I guess to add into that, is there an additional cost to maintain the air conditioning and to operate the buses with the air conditioning running?
Operation of the buses, you're gonna get a little bit because your fuel mileage, you got an extra compressor and stuff to run, but you're not really asking a whole lot of a system with has 3,000 or 300 horsepower. You're not asking a whole lot, but there is maintenance. You know, anytime you do that, you're gonna have filters to clean every year. You're gonna have every 4 or 5 years, you're gonna have to put Freon. You're gonna have compressors go bad, just like you do in your cars when you maintain your air conditioner. There is an extra cost for that.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the side of getting there because I'd rather do it now and go with the safety aspect because we are in the era of pandemics right now. So every virus that comes along is going to be a health emergency. And so this kind of puts us one step ahead of having to comply with everything else they're going to push out as far as health and safety. So I'd say under the umbrella of health and safety, it'd be a giant yes to invest in that now rather than try to have to retro or change what we do.
The word retro, I'll step in, is because it's almost impossible to retro a bus, to go back and reinstall them, just because of the safety and the manufacturing specs, that you would probably not get too much of a engineer to sign off on any type of modification to a school bus.
Yeah, and retro, that would be more, I was just thinking more like the change in what we do as far as our protocols and all that kind of stuff.
I understand.
Because that's
I just
very
wanted to make
costly as
sure that
well.
we talk
Right,
about it.
yeah.
Get it on record.
So,
It's to get it on record that retro means we're supposed to.
Oakland versus Thomas. What do we have most of now? I think we have more Thomases.
We actually are 50-50.
Okay.
Um,
So it wouldn't matter.
we've done both in the past. So if you look at financially, if you put air conditioning units on, your Oakland would be the less expensive way to go. If you don't, your Thomas's would be cheaper. So it really depends on which way you guys want to go. I would go with the lowest bid, whichever way you guys decide to go.
So, yeah, I think we have to go with the lowest bid, but I just want to make sure what's easy to work on. Thomas is Oakland. I'm for air conditioning, if nobody ever knew that. Just clarifying that, but I also want, if the buses are easier to work on, I think we should take that into consideration as well, and cheaper, I guess, to fix.
Right now, our vehicles, we pretty well standardize our fleet. No matter, that's the reason there's spreadsheet. They come with standard engines, they come with standard transmissions, they come with all the stuff. No matter what brand we get, that stuff is all standard. As much I can get standard, I even standardize the thickness of steel for rust on the sides. So we're getting thickest steel that we can, so we get rust. So those standards help us. It's the same filter, the same fluid, everything is pretty well the same. Also. So working on them is fairly the same.
Yeah, so Kevin kind of made a comment. Now, can you clarify, is the special education buses required to have air conditioner, or is it something we just do?
We pretty well just do it.
Okay.
The reason is at least we probably got 50 kids in our district that have some kind of air conditioning requirement in their IEPs. So instead of trying to shuffle buses around, we just said spec ed, and we did that several years ago. Since we got so many kids with special needs and health issues, we just decided at that time that was the best way.
And I guess we should just, since we have that mindset for our special education students, we should just, because we don't know what kind of allergies or things that people have, they don't always come forward. So I'll leave it at that, the air conditioning all the way, and especially in the softball complex.
But yeah, I think it makes a big difference. And my supreme confidence in Kevin is why I feel confident in saying we could absorb this $45,000 over the next 20 years that we have those buses.
So let me make a couple comments. So this is in the capital project, right? It's not something we have to require to bid to and take the lowest responsible bidder. This is a product. We don't necessarily have to take the lowest bid, but why else would we go out for bid or do an RFP for that sort of thing, right? So,
right.
To that point, we don't have to take lowest bid.
Okay.
But we should consider other things as well, things you've mentioned here. The other point I have is, as you can see, and if you look back to previous years, the cost of a school bus has gone up pretty significantly, 15 to 20%. We appreciate back in 2018 when the Pebble campaign took place and we promised the cycling out of more school buses so that we can reduce the longevity of our school buses. Does $13,800 or $11,000 a school bus at this point in time put a huge dent in that? No, but over time, if we're doing this for every school bus, can we promise to continue to do 5, 6, 7 school buses a year, or does that drop based on the escalating cost of the school bus, the things that we're wanting to put in that school bus? So just for consideration, for me, yes, we can budget to it. There's a dollar amount within the PEPAL fund that we have set forth. It's higher now because of the cost of the school bus and the promise to our community about keeping those buses up to date. As you'll see also in the recommendation, two school vans to be purchased at $45,000 to $50,000 a school van, significant costs. So there are other needs. School buses is a big need of transportation for students use every day back and forth to school. School vans, facilities, technology, those departments use those school buses to facilitate and service our school district from an operational standpoint. So as you make the consideration for air conditioning now versus later or whatever, just keep those things in mind.
So I'll just, for the board, how many buses do you need to complete the summer, to get every summer bus?
To get every summer bus, I said we're about 15 buses that we use during the summer for athletics and summer school and all that.
And how many?
About half of those are done. So we
So,
would need, with what we got coming in, we'd probably need another 4.
so there you go. I'd say, let's get you up to your summer air conditioning buses and then you can run the fleet from there. And I won't mention any more air conditioning.
Until next.
I won't mention any more air conditioning anywhere.
Not even bathrooms?
The buses, our buses. That way then you can manage your fleet and do what you need. But
So I just need to clarify, you were talking about lowest bid. If we're talking about not having air conditioning, the lowest bid is Thomas. But if we're talking about with air conditioning, the lowest bid is, how do you pronounce it?
International.
International.
Hoagland Bus.
Yeah, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm on board with Hoagland. I mean, safety, number one. That's all we talk about. And after what we've been through the last 2 years.
And just,
Filtration
is there a
plan.
way to find the money in another fund for the air conditioning portion of it, since it could be under the umbrella of health?
I think he said technology wanted to donate some. Is that what you
Right,
said?
yeah, I mean,
That's what I heard. Kevin.
Let me just start by saying resources are challenged, escalating costs throughout the whole district, wages, supplies, all those sorts of things. We could petition again and make a request on using ESSER funds or COVID-related funds for this. I can't guarantee that they would approve it. I don't know what's happening within the Department of Education, period. So they might take some time, but as far as us ordering the school bus at this point in time or relatively soon, that probably needs to happen in order for us to get to this now, a year and a half from now.
Mhm.
Does the timeline change at all between these two companies or air conditioned versus non?
I would say, Dan, manufacturing is probably the same.
Manufacturing does not matter. They come off we place the order, they build the bus for us, whether they put air on it or not, it's just part of the assembly line. So it doesn't change delivery dates whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, you brought up a good point with the PEPAL, our commitment with PEPAL funds and how we use it. And I think I would be hesitant to say like our new standard should be always air conditioning, but I do like what you said, Brett, which was like, does this get our fleet up to all the summer buses, and then we're good, at least until we start rotating those out. That seems to make sense to me. So I think if we want to put this to a vote, probably should go through and vote on the motion as it sits, and then have somebody, if that gets voted down, then somebody makes a motion to change it. Or
Yes.
the motion.
As a sidebar, I'm always confused why I make a motion before we discuss. So it's always been kind of like backwards in my book. So when they have the discussion and then be like, oh, hey,
Yeah.
yeah, we can make a motion, but I think it would help out for streamlining. So,
Right, so are we ready to?
Yeah.
Go, okay. Karen?
no,
No.
Yes.
No.
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 That motion fails. Can I get a new motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to buy 4 buses with air conditioning under Hoagland Bus and Truck for a total of $748,488.
And the 2 vans.
And the 2 vans, yes. Thank you.
Second.
All right, Karen?
Mr. Kraft, just one moment.
Oh,
please.
sorry.
As you can see in the agenda content, Thomas Truck is actually low on special needs. Bus, equipped bus versus Hoagland, about $2,000 low. We can go with Thomas for, Hoagland for all the buses.
Oh,
Or you
yeah.
can split this up.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
because he said we didn't have to do lowest bid, so
Do you want to
Well,
amend your
can you
motion?
amend your motion?
I will amend the motion. Just make sure I got this. So 4 77 passenger buses with air conditioner through Hoagland Bus and Truck. You'll have to do the math on that one. 1 special needs bus through Thomas Truck. And then the vans would come through which company?
That's to be determined.
To be determined, okay, and then approve 2 vans as determined by administration at a later date. So how do we want to do the math on that? You want to do that really quick?
Good catch,
I think
Kevin.
Kevin's done that. Kevin, you need a calculator?
Disappointed.
Well, that's true. We'll let that go.
Grocery shop to the penny, including taxes, but not tonight.
I was just picturing that scene from Good Will Hunting where he's like,
Yeah,
With the
done.
abacus.
Needs a chalkboard or something.
Hoagland's total would be $603,068. Thomas Truck is $145,420
for a total of,
for a total of $748,488.
that's weird.
That is weird.
you got that wrong.
Yeah, that's
That
not
can't
right.
be right.
Because that's if we go with Hoagland Bus for all special needs and 77. That's what it comes out to. You should be 2,000 fourth. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try it.
Six oh three, 68.
First 3 that come up with it.
It is 748, 848.
Is
Yeah,
it?
That is,
so you already had it
Weird.
figured out the cheaper way, didn't you?
well,
I think you already had that math done.
Number.
Wow.
Total with
okay.
AC, you were.
There you go.
You were good.
So just to clarify, 4 passenger, 77 passenger buses with air conditioning from Hoagland Bus at 139,767. 1 special needs equipped bus at 145,420 from Thomas Truck Center, and then 2 vans at a later determined date will be purchased for the total of $748,488. Final,
Plus the cost of the buses.
plus the cost.
Of the van.
Excuse me.
Or the vans.
The school bus vans.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, Karen?
Yes.
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 All right, on to letter E, photography agreement. I have a motion.
Motion to approve the photography agreement.
Second.
A tie, I think.
Yeah.
but-
so
Oh,
raise
was
it.
it-
You can have it, Brett.
Did you get, okay.
Like Tom's idea, we didn't discuss it.
Okay, any discussion on this?
That is the one and only.
Wait,
So,
yeah,
thank you to Reese.
all right, Karen?
Yes.
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 All right, on to topics for discussion. We have enrollment update. Mr. Horton?
I feel like I've just had a master's class in buses.
He did.
5 degrees for a white roof. Who figured that one out? Amazing. Anyway, Dan knows that stuff and I'm glad he does because I certainly don't. There's some documents in front of you with a paper clip on them, some enrollment stuff, and I know you've seen this this grid. You expect to see it nearly every meeting. It's kind of important right now from a lot of different standpoints. Number one, enrollment drives our ability to buy those buses and stuff like that from time to time, although not those buses that come out of that particular fund, but enrollment drives our budget for sure. More importantly, you know, it's the reason why we're here every day and why we do what we do. As you can see on the front page of this particular document, sorry about that. Anything marked in blue is either proceed with caution or stop. You know, when we look at, in particular in kindergarten, there's always a lot of blue in kindergarten because those sections, we try to keep them smaller than the rest. You know, somewhere hovering around 20. And we've been able, for the most part, to do that, which has been good. And then we've got a couple other areas that are just starting to creep a little bit. Second grade at 4 Mile isn't necessarily, it's really kind of a hot spot from this standpoint. I know the folks in the building are convinced that we have a number of kids that are going to come that we have yet to see. So that's why I kind of marked that one in blue. And then obviously 4th grade at Clay is starting to creep. And we've been at 28. I think this group's been at 28 since like 2nd grade, 1st grade or 2nd grade. It's always been a big group to play. But any of the numbers out to the red are where we were a year ago at this time. So if you look at where we were, we have exactly one more kindergartner than we did at this time last year at 501 instead of 500. And if you flip it over, Spring Creek, junior high, high school numbers there, and then the overall numbers, it's once again, a lot of good reason to celebrate. We're peaking over 7,000 students again this year, and then we dropped later in the year after we hit that peak. But currently we have 128 more students at this time than we did last year with 19 days to go. And yes, I'm counting before school starts because you know, on any given day, we get families that literally line up at the door out here and they come to us from literally all over the place. And what we don't always see all the time are the families who move, you know. So there still will be lots of kids coming and going until literally till school begins and even, you know, as deep into the school year as Labor Day, mostly because lots of states where kids come from don't start school before Labor Day. And they kind of maintain that for a while. And they don't think about school until Labor Day. So, so anyway, some really good news there, I think. You know, that plus 128 is great. I hope everything holds exactly where it's at right now for the next 19 days and then the school days after that, but it won't. You know, this was a snapshot of about 2.5 hours ago. Probably changed already. But, you know, a number, the second sheet I've given you there kind of works through waiver requests and open enrollment, placement of students, things like that. Now, this happened a month ago, so I apologize about the age of this document. So some things have changed, but we meet right after the 4th of July, we being all the elementary principals, myself and Deb Starcevich, the district registrar. And we go through all of the waiver requests that are submitted by families who would like for their child to go to a school that's not their neighborhood school. And at that time, we dealt with 63, and now it feels like 163 because they just keep coming, you know, and they will throughout the year, which is fine. We just work through them and deal with them. But if I were to guess, and this is really a dart at a board, way worse than Kevin's math. I'd say we're probably somewhere around 80 total. And of the original 63, 75% of those waivers were granted, 25 were not. Since then, gosh, it sure feels like we're really close to about, you know, maybe the next 20 or so, we're all granted. I can't think of one here recently that we have not granted. So we've got a lot of kids moving around into sections where maybe they're a little bit smaller than another classroom might be. Like let's go back to 4th grade at Clay. If one of those 28, 27 kids, if their parents asked us, hey, can we, rather than going to Clay, can we go to Centennial because there are 10 fewer kids in those classrooms? We'd certainly say yes. So that's kind of the track that we've taken at this point anyway. And then the original list of open enrolled students into the district, there were 39 kids that we placed on this particular day. And you can see the breakdown of where they went, which schools they went to. In years past, we'd say, you know, that the you know, certain families may submit paperwork after the March deadline, or kindergarten would stay open through September 1st, I think. But those are no longer rules anymore. So it really makes our discussion much shorter, which is nice. The next step for us, principals and their secretaries who actually just reported August 1st are identifying unregistered students, getting those kids registered. In particular, the kindergarten students we've never seen before. Most of the kids we've seen before, we'll move them forward into the next year, even though they haven't registered yet. But then follow up with families to make sure that things are getting updated, like phone numbers and emergency contacts and things like that. But and then along the same lines here, you know, obviously we're going to have open enrollment decision making all year, every day, every week, because again, a lot of the old rules just kind of went poof, and people are much freer to move around maybe than they were in the past. We'll still get waiver requests and parent questions, and changes in parents' lives sometimes really have a big influence on where their kids can go to school from time to time. And then obviously enrollment management it's every month, you know, from about Labor Day throughout the rest of the school year. I'll give you 2 different reports each month whenever you have a board meeting, so you can watch if you want. If you like watching paint dry, you can watch those numbers change. But it is kind of interesting over the course of time. Really, I had no recollection or no idea that families moved as much as they do. But holy cow, people move. They are on the move all the time, and so are their kids. But for the most part, I'll take any questions you have about enrollment. Go ahead, Tom.
Well,
Sorry.
I don't know, one's a statement, was a question, but the biggest thing from last month to this month is the 2 open positions that are gone. So
Yes.
the 2 open teaching positions. So that was awesome. So yeah, thank you to our administration. 'Cause
Thanks to those
that's
principals. They've been, I'll
number
tell you,
one.
they have been working their tails off to find people, find good people. Because we can find people, you know, when we walk down the street, but they've done a really nice job of kind of creating the next generation of Southeast Polk teachers. So I'm really super, you know, in a weird way, I feel like somebody's dad when I say this, but I'm really proud of them in a strange way.
And then, yeah, then
But they've
second,
done great.
yeah, second part of that was the kindergarten. I mean, 21 new kindergartners since last. So that was almost half of our 45 then, as far as growth from your last update. So,
Mhm.
and that's like you said, the great unknown. So is that, and I would assume that they're the last ones to kind of register maybe too, or the slowest class.
Oftentimes, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's kind of, I mean, it's exciting, but it's also kind of like, wow, when you kind of think about that
Yes.
kind of influx, the unknown still coming in. So
I could envision my wife and I eating dinner and looking at each other and going, oh God, one of our kids going to kindergarten this year. Did you register them? No, me neither. Okay, well, we probably ought to do that.
Right.
I can see families having that conversation a lot, which is
So-
great. It's fine.
Did you mention that you pre-register students who went to our schools last year but haven't registered? You just kind of register them for the next year, waiting for their parents to update the information? Is that
Yes.
what we do?
Yeah, we just kind of move them forward in the database with the idea that, hey, more than likely, are they going to be here next year? Most people are.
Right.
So we move them forward and then we deal with
And then
the
we
idea
go
of
ahead and
who's
do like a
moving,
nutrition.
who's not. Yeah.
The actual registration process isn't done. The numbers are moved
Right.
forward. And then there's an automated system that contacts them, kind of repeatedly reminding them to get in and do that registration and
I remember that
registrar
system.
Mhm.
yes.
One thing I thought was interesting, and maybe this won't hold, but the number in the high school looks like we're down over 100. Is that correct?
No, plus
Right.
128.
Plus.
No,
Plus
we're up.
128.
Looking at
numbers
the-
last
the-
year.
Junior high's down.
Yeah, junior high.
Am
would
I
be
reading
down.
that wrong? I'm looking
Yeah,
at
high
the-
school's up about 120.
Oh
This is
geez, I have
what
that
I'm-
backward.
129.
Okay, I was like,
Yeah. This
I was like, that might be nice to have that extra space.
It would have been nice.
Okay.
It would.
is the big.
Good.
It would. And then, and then you look at next year and you go, okay, well, 560 are going to graduate, 520 are going to move up, which means, okay, well, there might be a bit of a reprieve there, but then
Right.
again, we could have a run on open enrollment or a new neighborhood opens up and we end up with 50 high school kids we've never met before.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Unless we want to ask Lily as far as, what do you think about the high school?
It's gonna be a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I think, there's been kind of this ongoing conversation about the carrying capacity of that particular building and what all that looks like. And I would think that we're nudging, we're getting close.
Have we done anything for classroom space? I know that's off topic a little bit, but
What's that?
have we done anything for extra classroom space?
2024.
Come on.
All right.
Steve's confident they have everything that they need. The pinch points are always going to be those common spaces, the hallways and the cafeteria. Yes.
I'll have plenty of
Those
pinch
can't
points.
Your house,
It's going to be hard to hide this year.
teaching kids your house.
All righty. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah.
All right, on to summer learning programs. Dr. Latham?
Hard to believe that it's August, but here we are. And as we get ready to start a new school year, we want to take just a little bit of time to look back over the summer and some of the work that has been done by teachers and staff. So the summer work began the day after the kids left. So right away, we started some work. We had the opportunity to look at some of our data from the year before, not just the ISAF data, but our formative assessments throughout the year, our literacy data. School teams had a chance to look at their goals from the year before. Did they meet their goals? What actions led to meeting of those goals? Did they not meet the goals? What actions do they need to change? So we had that opportunity for teams on that day. Also some opportunities to celebrate the work that had happened over the year and set new goals and action steps. And that work, of course, will continue as we start the school year. And then we spent some time, I think we all know during COVID, our inventory of curriculum materials got a little bit out of whack. You know, when kids were learning at home, when the kids left in March and didn't come back, we got some of those materials back and some we didn't. And when kids were learning at home, we wanted to make sure they had everything they needed at home to learn. So the teachers and the associates spent about half of that day looking at the current materials, and we were able to match that with what had been ordered, and we put in a pretty significant order to recover materials that were lost during COVID. We think our inventory is up to date, fingers crossed, and that when the students start, they will have the instructional materials that they need to be successful. So that was a success, getting those materials available to students. As soon as school ends, the teachers always prefer to do this right away when it's still fresh on their minds, but we spend a good chunk of time, nearly the entire month of June, and actually we're doing some in August as well, curriculum revision. And what that entails is bringing teacher teams together throughout the year as they are teaching and taking the assessments. They make notes and say anything from, I think we should adjust the pacing of these two standards, to we need a comma instead of a semicolon on this item. So it's from big to small. And the curriculum coordinators lead the work with the teacher teams. They review the feedback from the year. They look at the data. We make adjustments to the pacing and any additions or revisions to the lessons. And up in that white box up there, these are all the teacher teams that have met this summer to revise curriculum. So a lot of teachers doing a lot of great curriculum work. We shared earlier that we had 2 cohorts of youth mental health first aid, both cohorts filled. We had an elementary cohort and a secondary cohort. We collected feedback from those teachers and incredibly positive responses on how useful and helpful that was. As Dr. Holupnik mentioned at the last board meeting, we have been awarded a grant in order to provide youth mental health first aid training to all staff here at Southeast Polk. And as part of that grant, we also have the plan to have some of our counselors and or teachers become trainers, so that we would have trainers on site that would be able to provide that here for our staff. So we are looking forward to building capacity there and engaging in that with each other. We did have some summer school this year. All the secondary buildings had summer school, and I believe Willowbrook and Runnels, Mitchellville, I think those are the ones. And of course, the kids came in. It's a great opportunity to do some reteaching of schools, sometimes, or of skills. Sometimes we do pre-teaching. So knowing that I'm going into 4th grade, here's some of the things I'm going to be getting, and so that they feel very confident with that when they come in. We did some language work with our students. We had the police department came in and did some teaching with I think they had their dog in there. You can see that up there at the top corner. There was also a lot of fun, some water bottles and different things like that outside in the heat, but the students really enjoyed that. And it's a great way to sustain their learning and avoid that summer slide that happens for some students during that time. We were able to, again, have our environmental science camp We didn't have that the last 2 years due to COVID precautions. This is a partnership between Southeast Polk, Drake University, and Metro Waste. And we have this each year. It seems like we pick the hottest week of the year. Dr. Somerville from Drake comes in and works with their teachers, and they create labs and lessons and align them to our curriculum to be held out at the Environmental Learning Center. And no matter how hot it is, we had to take shelter one year. The feedback always comes back, this is the best thing I ever attended. So a very valuable learning experience for our teachers, and we were able to get another cohort trained this summer. So looking ahead, hard to believe, but things are starting up again. A number of administrators attended the SAI, School Administrators of Iowa Annual Conference, which was Wednesday and today of this week. It's always good to go back and collaborate and see your peers. Again, we haven't done that for a while, and listen to some of the experts in the field and get us ready to start a new year. Dr. Lupnick has sent out the welcome letter along with the schedules for the new teacher workshop, as well as the pre-service coming up. And yesterday, today, and tomorrow, we have two of our literacy coordinators. They were here to visit with you. Carrie Bernstein and Angie Shannon are teaching a 3-day class on literacy, and 40 teachers are taking that class. And they were tweeting out today how valuable and how excited they are to take that into their teaching repertoire next year. So went all through the summer, still going, and we're excited for the students. So again, as we get ready to start August, we're glad that all of our staff are taking that opportunity to rest and relax and be excited and inspired. And we're very excited to see our kids coming in just a few weeks. Okay, and switch to an even more fun topic. We are going to take another look. Oops, I gotta do that, don't I, Mark? Oh, there we go. Last board meeting, we had a preliminary look at the ISASP data, looked at it, had a few questions. Since then, we've had a little bit more data come back that we're able to share and dig a little bit deeper, and I want to share that data this evening. So we're going to look at the achievement levels and the state averages. We did receive those in between our last two meetings. We looked at English language arts, and we'll break it down into reading, language, and writing. We'll look at some of our subgroup data, specifically free and reduced lunch, and then look at the parent portal and the student reports, as that will be being pushed out to parents the week before school starts. So I just wanted to show you these slides, and these come from the state. I really wish I had a little laser pointer, but I'll see if I can direct as we look at those, because these bar graphs are a little bit confusing. But you can see the top bars. You have the spring of 2022, and then comparing to the spring of 2021. And then you see that for ELA on the left, and you see that for math on the right. So that's the district average. And then at the bottom, you will see the state average. So one thing that's, when we looked last time and we looked at the percent proficient, we are looking at the proficient plus the advanced. And those two numbers together would be the percent proficient. So when I showed you the data last time, it would have said ELA at 3rd grade would have been 75% proficient. This data allows me to see what percent were in the advanced range, so you can see that as well. What's helpful to look at here for my eyes anyway, it might look different for you, is to look at the yellow, because that's the not proficient, and we want that to get smaller. So this was 2021, and we can see it got smaller as we move forward. So it's not where we want it yet, but moving in the right direction. Then we want to look down here, well, how did it compare to the state? It's also smaller than the state. But sometimes we have to look a little bit more because when we look at math, it got smaller, but not by much, but we increased advanced by 6%. So sometimes when we're looking over here, and if we don't see much of a change, we want to see if there was a little bit of a change over there. So I'm used to looking at bars that go straight up and down. The state puts it out with the sideways graph. But if you can kind of get your eyes to looking at that yellow piece and see how that changes from one year to the next, as well as how it compares to the state. So again, grade 3, you can see the same for grade 4. And what I will tell you right up front is all elementary data points, the range, we were 6 to 14% above the state average in all of the elementary data points. And you can see 5th grade has ELA, math, and science. 4th, 5th, and 6th grade math were all double digits above the state average in math, and 3rd grade English language arts was double digits above the state average. Again, our goal is beyond the state average, but with the context of COVID, that's a good point to check to see if we are on the right track with our data. You can see grade 7. Another thing to compare, and Tom was asking questions about that, so I pulled the data. The first year the test was given, there are 21 data points that we're looking at here. And the first year this test was given in 2019, we exceeded the state average on 19 out of 21 of the data points. Then we didn't give it in 2020 because of COVID. And then when we gave it last year, we exceeded the state average on 16 of 21 of the data points. So a little bit of, kids didn't have as much school. They missed that school in March. And so that number went down. This year, it would suggest we're rebounding as we exceeded the state on 18 of the 21 data points. So it does suggest a rebound, always room for us to continue to grow in that area. Any questions on the state data before I go to the next component? Whitney?
So the 11th grade, we're only 2% above what the state is trending at. Is that correct?
2% below. So
True.
they,
Okay, yeah, you're
yeah,
right. 2%
I know
low.
it's hard.
We're 2% worse or 2% below. You're right.
yes.
Okay, so I'm sure there's gonna be more information where there's a plan for us to
Yes.
not graduate 32% of our kids from proficient in reading.
Right.
Okay.
And we will talk about that when we come to the end. When we are looking at our data points, and I have a little cheat sheet here, we are looking at anything that is below or within 1 or 2 points above. We'd like to see that number 5% or above. And so that will allow us to target those areas.
And just, I might be off topic, but what do we do with those kids who aren't proficient in English in their senior year? Is not proficient in English, and I'm not sure what all the data points are, but that doesn't mean that they can't read. They're just not reading at the 12th grade
Right.
standardized core
Exactly.
English level.
Right.
Okay.
So we have different pathways for where they are going next, but our goal is to get them as equipped as they possibly can to find success in that next pathway. Okay. And we'll follow up with that a little more, because that's exactly right. That's where we're going. So last time I shared with you English language arts data, and I shared that that represented reading and writing together. So we have since got some data that allowed us to split the reading subtest and the language and writing subtest. And when you're looking at this, it's not going to average out because the writing prompt is also factored in there, but it uses a rubric instead of a standard scale score. So the math looks a little bit different. But you can see on here, the first bar, the blue bar, is the ELA, or the total score for English language arts. Then the red bar is reading, and the yellow bar is language and writing. So when we look at this data and start to analyze, what I'm looking at, so right away I see 5th grade and I see a discrepancy between reading and writing. So we're gonna dig in there with the curriculum, look at the writing, make sure that we shore that up with our curriculum. So what I'm looking for here is a discrepancy between the reading and writing. And we see that again at 9th grade and a little bit at 10th grade as well. To add to that, this is from the writing prompt then. This is factored into that language writing score, but it comes in as a rubric. So the rubric is on a scale of 1 to 5. And I think you will see on these 3 slides, I'm seeing more white space than I'm comfortable with. So this will definitely be a district initiative. We were working in this area, fell off the radar a little bit with COVID, and we will bring it back in a strong way. So with the writing prompt, it's divided into 3 areas. The first one is development of ideas, and the blue is 21 and the red is this year's score. So you can see the difference between last year and this year. And then you can see the second aspect is the organization of the writing. And the third aspect is language use. And again, I'm going to come back to some of our actions, but this will be a district-wide initiative for us moving forward.
So help me understand, this writing prompt,
Yes.
and you said development of ideas, which is great, organization is great. How much of it is spelling or punctuation or?
That comes in the language use.
In the language, okay, thank you.
And then also, Rick, in the, there's also there's a part where they write, but there's also a part where they analyze writing and do multiple choice or small or a writing prompt. Short answer response, there's my brain, that goes along with that. So that's part of the language test, and then it's also included in the writing prompt.
Is this paper pencil?
It's paper pencil for some students and online for others.
Okay.
So in looking at subgroup data, could be here all night, but I decided to share free and reduced lunch data because that encompasses the greatest amount of students that in our subgroups. So when we look at all of our subgroups, that has the most number of students. So I thought it might be helpful as a board to start there in looking. And I wanted to start by sharing our free and reduced lunch percentages over the last 5 years. And actually, that is fairly stable. But I think as Amy Ahern mentioned last time she was here, that could change this year with the way that the lunches were delivered. So we'll continue to monitor and watch that. But we're at about 1/3 of our students have socioeconomic challenges, and that is the subgroup that we will look at now. So we're going to look at this 2 ways. The first way is trend data. So this is 3rd grade to 3rd grade, and we are looking at all students, and then we are looking at free and reduced lunch. And I will point out that all students does include free and reduced lunch students in it. I usually don't break that down until that number gets over 50%. Otherwise, the numbers get a little bit skewed. So you can see all students compared to free and reduced lunch and what that looks like for each grade level. Then what we will show on this chart is cohort data and look to see whether we narrow the gap. Bridget helped me with this. I always get turned around on this because we desire a negative. A negative number is good. I won't say it's positive. A negative number is what we are looking for. So, so what we're looking is that there was a 14% gap from 3rd to 4th. There was, as 3rd graders, it was a 14% gap. As 4th graders, 13. They narrowed the gap by 1 percentage point. So anything that's green, that's going in the right direction. And then the things that are not green are areas that we will, again, I'll have some actions that I'm going to share here in just a little bit. That's for English language arts. And then here is the same comparison for math. and here is the gap. So in a celebration, 7th to 8th grade reduced the gap by 14%.
Wow.
That's yay.
Do you know what they did?
Yeah, I've been talking to Mr. Daly because there's a couple of places there. Junior high also had some of the higher rating scores. So one of the things that they are doing at the junior high is they brought in Alex Math as one of their interventions. And they're also doing some authentic problem solving and writing in math, writing in social studies, writing in science. And so they're seeing some gains there. And that's exactly what we do. We see where the celebrations are, see what's going on, and how we can replicate that in other areas. So with that celebration, 8th to 9th is an opportunity for growth. And so we will continue to examine those. One of the things that we're looking at as we look at an 8-9 building is aligning the curriculum between 8th and 9th. And so that's an action. We were going to wait a year, but I think we might start right now. So
Good idea.
So last time I shared some very big actions, and when you get more data, then you can start to, as you dig into the data, you dig into the actions a little bit more. So again, wherever the data is at or below state averages, we really want to look at core instruction and see what we can do to strengthen the core and strengthen what's happening within our standards. As I mentioned, we want to address the amount of writing instruction and practice at different grade levels. Again, I visited with the junior high, their teachers, they have very specific writing outcomes in their English language arts units. And their science and social studies teachers are taking on some of those writing standards in their units as well. And that seems to be having a positive impact on achievement. And then, as always, we'll revisit the practices for working with students with economic challenges. And you can see those, economic challenges doesn't mean that we're challenged in academics. And so keeping those high expectations and providing that support. And continue to study and use that data to monitor. We want to monitor more frequently to make sure we're on the right path, and building confidence and autonomy in our learners that they can do that and be successful. Again, we've talked about MTSS and the interventions, continuing that positive culture, strong relationships, family engagement, and then access to our community resources, which they've been tremendously helpful to make sure our students have what they need so that they can be then as successful in school. So from the district level, it's pretty big. And then as we get to the building level, we dig in a little bit more. And when we get to the grade level, we dig in a little bit more, in the classroom level, and then to the individual level. So the smaller that gets, the more specific we get with our actions. So the data is ready to be pushed out into the parent portal. We know right now parents are being inundated with emails. So been working with Keith Lyles and Jeannie Christensen to push that out the week before school starts. And then they will receive a 4-page detailed report. And I'm just going to go over it real quickly. The first page gives them a visual, and where I showed you the yellow, the blue, and the dark blue. So I call it the windshield wiper. Some people call it a speedometer, but they get a little visual and they can see, here I am in ELA, here's where I fall in math. Then as you start to look at ELA, it breaks it down into key ideas and details, craft and structure, integration of knowledge and ideas. And you can see where you're performing at the low levels, middle levels, and high levels. So you get more detail for English and reading, you get more detail for writing and the domains, and then you get more detail for math as well. So those are the domains that are studied in this particular sample grade level. This is a sample student. Then you can see growth. So you see the year that we're skipped, but this particular child is in 6th grade. So you can see where the star is. That's their progress over the last 4 years without having that test, the 1 year. So you can see the star was going like this, but then the diagonal started to go back a little bit. So for that individual student, we want to regroup and make sure we get it going in that direction. And then you see that for math as well. And then I think this is the last page. You have the writing score up there. So you can see where the student scored. The diamond is the district average. So you can see where your child scores in relationship to where the district average is. And then down at the bottom, that is DOK, depth of knowledge, which means a 1 is a basic literal level. 2 is more inferential and 3 is more evaluative. So you can see, like I look at this student and they got 7 out of 10 on DOK 1 and 10 out of 17 on 2, but 4 out of 7 on 3. So maybe they're doing fine with the lower levels. Sometimes in MTSS, we go all the way back to the beginning, where this student would need more opportunities with higher level thinking and higher level questioning. So as we move forward, our goal was, when we got these new reports, was to have parent meetings, because there's a lot there. You can see that's there, and these are new assessments. They're not the assessments that we got when we were in school. So our goal was to have parent meetings. Those got derailed a little bit, but we're going to put those back on the schedule for this year, where we will host nights where parents can bring their reports in if they choose, and we'll sit down and go through the reports with them so that they can get a better understanding, as well as share what some of the actions they can take to support and work with the school in order to see that achievement improve. So that's digging a little deeper. Again, as we get into our school improvement planning and get to the building, grade, and student level, those actions will become more precise and more specific. Winnie?
I'm always the one. So you mentioned the parent portal, and I'm really glad that you're doing parent meetings, because it looks really cool. But if you have more than one kid, things can get a little crazy. You have on there the district diamond. Are you also going to tell the parents where that we are in comparison to the state?
I
Because
can.
That might be a little bit of a boost.
Because usually what I'll do is I'll probably share a big overview presentation to start off with, and then we'll get into the individual data.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I know that some parents aren't able to or don't see a value, or they just don't come to meetings. So if you have a student who is struggling or is in need of some sort of additional assistance, would you reach out to that parent and say, hey, there's this report that might help?
Sure.
Like, would you do a reach out like that?
Yep.
Okay.
And
I
we've
think that'd
also
be
talked
really good.
about, doing it by Zoom. So if maybe they're not
Yeah.
able to come in, they can click on the report and follow along.
And that actually might be better,
Yeah.
because they're following along electronically anyway.
Yep,
So
exactly.
yeah. And then my last thing is, you mentioned community resources. What, I guess I'm not quite aware of all the community resources. Is there a listing, or is it on 211, or is there?
If we work with Amy Anderson, she does have a listing of those community resources. I think of Swerve, and I think of Kids Cafe and having the food. I think of the backpack program where students get the school supplies. So those are just the ones that come to mind as we start school. But Amy has a complete listing of those community resources that we partner with.
I'm going to jump in for 1 second. There are a couple I can think of too that are just emerging. I know that the Altoona Library has been working hard this summer to really look at what are the needs of the community and where are kids being underserved, and they're putting together programs outside of school to try and attract. And I know that Lutheran Church of the Cross is doing the kind of very similar work. They're actually out canvassing all different groups. I sat for an interview with them. I know lots of people have. And so there'll be some new things there that'll be on the table for families too.
I just know that there's a bunch out there, and it's nice that we have kind of a clearinghouse for all of those.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It's good.
I think what you're doing is amazing. This report's amazing. I wish we could, I wish everybody could see what we see, but it's very helpful to see what we're doing in English language, reading and writing, and so many areas. I just wish we had, and I give you kudos to your team and our teachers about what works, the MTSS and all those other things work. And then you identified the junior high has some techniques that may have helped, which is fantastic that you can zero in on something like that. That's wonderful. Do we have anything like this that we can evaluate science?
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
It doesn't have to be a yes. I just.
Yeah. Yes, we do. A partial yes. We can look at instructional practices and we can look at best practice because we know the science test at 5, 8, and 11 isn't the
Mhm.
best representation of the core. Having said that, our peers are doing well in that area. So is it the reading and writing? Is it the problem solving? Is it the inquiry model? And those are things that we can seek to find out because no matter what's on the test, we can always do better.
I mean, what you showed us tonight is amazing that you broke everything down and it'd be, I mean, I know it's not a perfect world and you can't do everything, but boy, if you could do that with science and some of the other
Yeah.
important categories.
Yeah.
That'd be.
Yeah, that is something science breaks it down into, not as far as the others, but they do
Right.
separate it into earth, life and
Right.
earth, life and physical science. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But yes, that is an area that we will dig into more deeply. Yes.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I want to say thank you too. This is great. This is the type of information I just eat up and I emailed you the questions and
Yes.
I like looking at the data. I'm curious, like historically, I remember attending a parent advisory or superintendent advisory council meeting 10 plus years ago and looking at like sixth grade always seems to be a challenge year.
Yep.
And seeing that there's progress made in some areas, but in others there are still challenges. And then I'm thinking about I'm looking at that number for 7th and 8th grade with math. That is amazing. Like kudos to everyone who is involved in and increasing or decreasing, however you look at it. Do we see those things carrying forward in the achievement in future years with that cohort, or do we see it more like per year? If you know what I'm saying, like, are we gonna?
And I think that with the test being so young, it's hard to answer that completely, and that's why we look at it both trend and cohort. So that 6th grade data, that is something over trend that we see. And so that's something to look at that particular grade level. These students that have come to junior high, now they did drop when they transitioned into 9th grade. So we're looking at those transition years, 5th to 6th, 8th to 9th, seems to be where we have some of those drops, and that is a trend. And so again, when we did curriculum work this year, we get 5th and 6th grade teachers. We have 6 and 7 working together for the new building, and we have 8 and 9 working together. So I think shoring up some of those transition years, because that does come out in some of our trends.
That's interesting. I didn't think of it that way, but that makes complete sense.
There are some things in here that we're like, yeah, we've seen this before. And then there's others that you go, oh, where did this come from? So I will say that all schools have really embraced this, but we are seeing a definite correlation between the strength of the PLC and student achievement. And we know that those two things go together. And we know some of the events of the last couple of years have hampered collaboration. So we're eager to go full scale on the collaboration and the instructional coaching as things stabilize a little bit in our buildings. So we definitely see a correlation there.
So I'm going to be that person. I'm sure PLC has to do with the collaboration of teachers and learners, but what does that stand for?
Professional learning community.
Thank you.
Yes. No acronyms. I should have known that one.
So my turn. Okay. All right. So, insight I think is fantastic. I have alarm bells going off all over the place, as I'm sure you do too. So, I mean, because I look at them like, okay, a third of our kids are not proficient, 40% of our kids are not proficient. So, I mean, that kind of comes back to like, what's our concrete plan, or, what's kind of, because I mean, I look and the high school's got me worried big time, but then I sit and think, okay, almost a third of our graduates are core. I mean, I think that's a problem.
Sure.
So it's just kind of that whole, overall, we're recovering slowly, but it's like, I don't know. I just think like an aggressive approach, because I sit and head spins at night and I'm thinking, okay, where do we steal more education time?
Sure.
Right. Sure. I'm thinking, what do we do during study halls? What do we do during breakfasts? Because our free and reduced eat more breakfast.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, okay, what can we do during breakfast, to kind of,
And I'm even
what can
gonna
we show?
go
What can we
one step
do?
further and getting them to school regularly. Chronic absenteeism has really become more of a challenge since COVID. And it's been more of a challenge at the upper grade levels. I think everyone across the state, when you look at that data, the recovery is happening more for the younger students, and the students who are kind of in the middle, it's coming a little bit slower. So I think you're right, but we need to get them here, and there's, again, a definite correlation between students who attend regularly and their achievement scores.
That's a good point, because we haven't talked attendance.
So are you saying there's a third of the students in the high school area who aren't showing up to school?
No, that we'll bring that data later. That it doesn't correlate tightly, but there is a strong correlation between the students who are falling off the proficiency levels and their absentee rates. So we are putting together a task force for that. Daryl Butcher and Amy Anderson.
Taking those students out. So let's say there's 15% of the students who aren't coming. What are we doing for the other percentage of students who are coming to school,
Sure.
aren't being proficient?
Yeah.
You know?
And that's when they have their problem solving teams. They look at that. They look at, are these kids, and they're coming to school every day and they're still not getting it. And then when Rick talked about the MTSS and meeting with those students early in the day, providing that extra intervention. And I'm going to go back to Tom. We can't intervene our way to proficiency. So we need to strengthen the core so that we have fewer students falling out for proficiency and then build it from there.
Yeah, because it's,
And you're planning on doing this on an individual level, so you can't give us like concrete answers because it's each student's.
Yeah. And so one of the things, and I'm not going to wrap up yet, but as I wrapped up, if we take the work we did in the summer along with this data, that all goes into our school improvement plan. And then one of our district and one of my goals for the upcoming year is to revisit those improvement plans on a more regular basis. And instead of maybe looking at them as for the end of the year, 90 days. Let's take a look at 90 days and dig into that data regularly, making sure we're on the right path, making sure we're getting those students who need extra support. So that's one of our district goals, one of my own personal goals, to revisit those plans, not just in August. And and the schools do a great job of revisiting it regularly, but I think we can study that from the district level and provide the supports and resources along the way.
And you have a task force that that the district is creating to get those kids to school.
And as we've been talking with our partners at Heartland and the state, we're not alone in this. And so we're going to be reaching out to some other partnerships to help us with this and that campaign to have our students in school. And then to have them have successful experiences there.
I think that's a good idea going forward. Like when we talk about like our learning and then get that based throughout the year, if we kind of have that sidebar like attendance too, and kind of use that as a time to touch base. Because then I'm thinking now it's like, okay, what are we doing to give our teachers more time? Or what are we doing to give them more? I mean, I don't know, because it makes me think about like standards-based grading and how much more time that takes. Okay, is that something that we boot for right now? And we revisit that later, kind of after we show up core. And then it makes me question like block studies. Is block studies working correctly? But then we're kind of limited by a pandemic happening during the same time and then learning recovery. So it's just that infancy of data where we don't have, what I mean? Yeah. But it makes me kind of look at, we're going to have to kind of look at it all and then try to make decisions. But it's like, okay, are the block studies working? What are we doing for our students? What are we doing with our study halls? What are we doing with our
And both of those things can actually help and assist the learning recovery if we put all the pieces together. And it's complex. I want to add too that we are adding learning recovery specialists to each building. Right. So they will be there to provide additional multi-tiered system of support and work with students who are struggling and calling students who aren't there and touching base with them every day. So they have that person, that they can connect with.
So we have 2 in the upper buildings, right?
I think there's 3 at the high school, but they're going to kind of rotate that through for a longer period of time because they're 90 days. So the high school, we'd look at that as 270 days.
Yeah. And so we got to, I suppose, I don't know. There's so many questions.
So
but I'm thinking like study halls a lot of kids have multiple study halls during high school. So I mean, are we making that like a time that they can go visit with their learning recovery specialists?
They can either go to study hall or there's academic support labs during that time. So they can get support during that time.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, all that stuff's gonna.
Do we have the learning recovery specialist positions all staffed?
No, but some of them are planning on bringing them in later because they have
Okay.
between now and 2024 and they've looked at their school improvement plan and their data. And so some of them are intentionally bringing them in later
Okay.
to provide that support, but those who wanted to start the year with them have them in place.
Yeah, we have,
So
what,
they
we
have a
approved
strategy.
four
Tonight,
tonight,
It was
Yeah.
on, it was on the consent agenda.
so. I don't know. This is just tough for me, because I'm like, what's the plan? What's the
I'm
plan?
gonna do it now.
Yeah.
I get it.
But
And I guess that's, and part of the reason, I didn't feel like the two presentations I gave tonight connected, but they do.
They do.
Because the plan isn't just, looking at this data tonight. The
Right.
plan started the day after the kids left. Been working on it every day of the summer. We add a little bit more. We went to a learning training. We added some more. They're in class. They're adding some more. And so it's continuing to wrap around that and refine it and really provide the best experience for students that we can to support their learning.
And if we can't help them, we not provide, but we give them options outside the school for, what's your favorite word?
I have lots of favorite words.
Oh, yeah.
Like tutoring outside of,
No, it's on the tip of my tongue. What is, maybe. Anyway, it's for like,
Academic support.
yeah, it's like academic support, but you got a special word you use for it that's, I can't remember.
extended learning.
No, anyway. Moving along, but
Okay,
so if somebody needed that, there's opportunities outside that we can push them towards, say,
Yes.
maybe they need to,
like
do
for
this.
Sylvan or Huntington.
yeah.
Yeah.
something like that.
We think we can do better. So if at all, we think
Yeah, only if we
because
can't help. 'em.
it's more precise, when you go to and I'm not putting myself into trouble. We do everything we can here first to
Okay.
provide the support that we need. We feel like that's our job and we should be able to do that. If they have found success outside of that, we certainly support them with that and provide guidance and share information back and forth with those support systems.
Yeah, and we only have so many hours in the day, obviously. and
True.
The state kind of, gives us those guidelines of 180 days and
Yeah.
summer schools, but I mean, it's still, parents have to take that into their, I guess what I'm trying to say is school can't do everything.
It's
We do the
partnership.
best we can with the time we have them. We're out of a pandemic. I mean, I think time is what we need, and I think it's gonna take time just to start seeing those. So, I mean, I appreciate Tom, but, we can't rush them either, because then you're gonna miss something along the way.
We can't pour so much on the plate that it implodes, but we're moving forward.
So the numbers are improving, I think, from last year. I think our numbers improved, and I think that's what we need to see. And
so,
I would say in
Some,
most
yeah, no, I
areas,
mean,
their arrows are
get-
going in the right direction.
get
but
a
there are some
percent, that's
places
better
where
than-
We need to address. I agree.
now there's some that are going obviously the
Yeah.
wrong way, but those are things that you have to dig into because we've never done this before. So.
Right.
well, yeah, and the thing that kept me from getting an ulcer over the high school data is I know the high school kids don't try like the younger kids do. So just as far as when they take the ice fast, it's kind of like, it's a waste of time. and They kind of roll through. So I always look at that and go, okay, this is not their best.
But we can work on that too. We
Right,
can work on engagement
but
and celebration.
Yes,
So
but that's still a tough sell.
be the
Much easier in the elementary.
half
So
full
we get there, I think,
Yeah.
more of their focus. So otherwise I'd be like, oh.
Yeah,
But
But
yeah.
the older they get, engagement becomes an issue as well. Agreed.
I think it's personal drive, laziness.
Well, that's about half of them, but
I mean,
Right
let's
here.
face the facts. I mean, we got lazy over COVID. I did. Look at me, I gained 10 pounds.
only 10.
You can't see it, but
All right, any other questions? outside?
I'll leave it right there.
All right.
And thank you for your questions. That really helps us as we work together as a team. It's all of us working together to support our kids. So very much appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, let's adjourn at